You can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.
Hello, hello, and welcome out there in podcast land. You have reached Johnny Has the Keys, a podcast where two old friends get together. We discuss horror and science fiction, films, television, literature, probably more literature this time than most. And we talk about the key elements of those stories or those media and things that they've influenced since then. If you are new to us, I hope you enjoyed the show and you'll come back. We are on podcast platforms of choice and also on YouTube. So if you're watching us on YouTube, Tim will probably have a bunch of pictures that you'll see. But subscribe to us and like us and maybe even leave a comment. If you are listening to us on the podcast, the same thing. Definitely give us a good rating and get in touch with us. We do have a Johnny Has the Keys website as well as email, so you can get in touch with us that way as well. My name is David. I am here with Tim. Tim, how have you been? What have you been up to? You've got a creature behind you there.
I do. He's right over my shoulder, isn't he?
Yes.
Sorry, I was just rerouting my power here. I had forgotten to do that. I'm trying to give us all the juice we need. And by the way, you're a lot warmer, but you're a little darker.
I'm warmer, darker. Okay.
You're in hell, literally.
I am. I'm in hell here. Look at this. There's skeletons rising up out of the dark here. I mean, out of the flames.
It would be remiss of me not to mention to all of you listeners out there, if you don't tune in to our outtakes when we're off for a holiday or for an extended period of time,
then you're
missing out on some good conversation.
Yeah.
Because we tend to talk for 10 or 15 minutes before every show just to get warmed up. And sometimes we talk about things that we wish we had talked about on the show.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm doing well this week in genre related stuff. Let me see if I can find my background here. I wasn't really in horror or sci-fi world. I was in the world of comedy genre, that is. Our old friends, Monty Python.
And now for something completely different.
Yeah. I don't know what kind of deal those Python people have with Netflix, but there is literally over 10 movies and programs on Netflix that are Python, whether it be awesome. Holy Grail and Life of Brian, the movies, or the series, or this documentary that I'm getting ready to talk about right now. Mm-hmm. This documentary came out, it's not been 10 years. It's been a little while though. It's been maybe 6 or 8. It's got a lot of recent interviews with the remaining members of Python. Mm-hmm. Graham Chapman was already dead when it was filmed, but they do speak with his partner, which I found interesting. And then I don't know. It's fascinating to see the origins, the way they structured it. It's like the first episode is before they met to when they met. The second episode is the beginning of the television show. The third is the success of the television show. The fourth is Holy Grail. The fifth is Life of Brian. So they kind of just progressively go through the careers of these guys.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And the biggest thing to me, one of the most relevant things to me about watching it is hearing other people talk about their experience with Python, comedians and legends in particular. Lorne Michaels is one because, he's like over here doing Saturday Night Live just shortly after. And he's like, these guys were like nothing anybody had ever seen. Yeah. You've got people like Simon Pegg or Eddie Izzard on the British side of the continent. But then you've got Hugh Hefner and Lorne Michaels over here and Dan Aykroyd talking about them as well. Mm-hmm. They talk about, what we associate with them, which is silliness and absurdity, but more often than not, they talk about the intelligence behind this supposed silliness and how smart these guys were and how many historical accuracies there actually are in the Holy Grail and the research they put into the stuff they did. And it's a joy. And seeing them interviewed is fun too, because they can be completely serious talking about certain events, the way it's edited, because they're never in the same room together. It's just edited to the point of what they're talking about is the same thing. And sometimes they're making fun of each other. Sometimes they're completely serious. And sometimes, like in John Cleese's case, you have no idea if he's being serious or not.
Right. With that straight face, the way he delivers stuff and everything.
Right. Right. So it's really funny at the same time. But it's also sad too. Like they go into Graham's alcoholism, which was bad. I mean, it was really, really bad. Like I'm surprised that he remained in the group the entire time. I'm surprised they didn't fire him. I'm really
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I think the closest we got on this side of the pond was probably National Lampoon. Lampoon in the early days when it first started in the 70s and everything else was that kind of really intelligent. I mean, they were doing silly and parody and all that, but there was that underlying level of cynicism and truth underneath it all, and political satire as well. Kind of like Saturday Night Live was when it first started. They had that edge to everything.
Right.
We've talked about it, I think, a few times in the past year or so, or 2 years. I think it would be very challenging now to be a comedian because there's so much
political correctness.
Much you can't do that you could never get away with Python now. I don't think you could ever get away with a lot of, early Saturday Night Live now. I watch Mel Brooks movies and go, oh, there's no way you're doing this. No way you are doing Blazing Saddles now. Not in a million years.
Right. And we watched that History of the Sitcom and saw the, I think, parts of the first episode of All in the Family. And you're
All
like,
in the
wow,
Family.
How would that happen now? I don't know that it could. And it was groundbreaking at the time.
I don't think any other group, I know definitely any other group of comedians, stayed together that long and or had such an influence on comedy in general and filmmaking to an extent.
John was the one that kept wanting to quit. They kept having to talk
John Cleese
into staying. Yeah. The rest of them weren't ready. I mean, he only wanted to do 3 seasons. And they kept saying, no, we got to do more. And fortunately they did, because when PBS found them is when they broke big.
Yeah, they changed the face of television, especially, comedy television, I think. That combination of stuff that was obviously studio live and or films that they did, shorts that they did. So I'm sure, I could, as soon as you said Lorne Michaels, I went, oh yeah, I could see how that would definitely influence Lorne. And the way he especially approached like those first 5 years of Saturday Night.
Well, and Eric Idle and Michael Palin were guests on Saturday Night.
Oh, yeah.
Too.
As they should be.
Right.
Idle and Palin. Cleese is probably my favorite, but Idle's probably second. Palin being third,
Yeah. I love them all. Terry Jones cracks me up too, but him and the two Terrys, as they refer to them as, because no one can distinguish them.
Yes.
Even though one's American.
Right.
And it talks about how, Terry Gilliam ended up with them, but they also were the directors. So they were always fighting too, because one of them wanted to be in control.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
But you mentioned similarities. I, on this side of the pond, think of Kids in the Hall, because they were so similar. They even did the women's roles as well, dressing in drag. And that show is supposed to be coming back, isn't it? Aren't they doing
I had not heard that. Like a revival?
They were bringing it back. I think that was a Lorne Michaels vehicle too. And it'll be curious to see how that works, because I don't think men impersonating women goes over very well these days either, unless you're
No.
Medea.
Well, but you could just say you're gender neutral and you're playing both, or whatever, I guess. I don't know. Yeah,
well,
I think
Kids in the Hall is smart enough that they could play off of those kind of things too, I would think.
Yeah, but to me,
Sexual
that's
identity.
because you said they talk a lot about the intelligence of the group and everything else. And I think to me, that's a big precursor of being a good comedian, being a smart, being a successful comedian, is you have to be smart. You can't just be Larry the Cable Guy all the time, sort of thing. You've got to have that. You've got to be able to be intelligent enough to observe your surroundings and then make fun of them. Robin Williams was a genius of improv and a genius, extremely smart. George Carlin, one of my favorites.
My absolute favorite.
Oh yeah,
yeah. But you got to keep it fresh too, or you get bored.
Yes, you can't just keep going back to the same well. Get her done or whatever. No, you can't just do that.
Right. I mean, yeah, sure, they'll do the parrot sketch again in front of a live audience, but they're not going to do it again in a movie or on television.
No, done, been there, done. I know you guys want it. Go back to the classics and watch it. Kind of thing. Well, I didn't have as much fun as you, but I have done, because I've been doing a lot of research with podcasts and listening to a lot of different ones and I've branched out. So I've regularly listened to a few true crime podcasts, and I think I've mentioned before the one that I like called Morbid, which is basically these two, and I think they're sisters. I haven't done a lot of research on them, but I think they're sisters, but they just, take a true crime case and then talk about it for, an hour. And one of them usually gives all the details, and then it's the other one reacting. And at first, I thought their repartee and their fun, back and forth was scripted. And then I started thinking, no, some of this, I can tell it's not. These are genuine reactions kind of thing. So maybe it is one doing all the research and the other one having to react to it. That would be kind of cool. But they've since developed and said little things have slipped where they've said, oh, well, she actually put in her notes, oh my God, here. So they're at least reading the same notes when they record. Well, and I went, we don't read the same notes. We don't even send each other the freaking notes.
Oh, no. We read our own. Yeah.
But no, they're reading off the same set of notes.
Oh, that's strange.
Like
are they
almost
standing in front of one of those like sheet music holders?
I don't know. I haven't watched any. They don't YouTube, so I don't watch any of their YouTube. But I also started listening to a couple of other, some Star Trek podcasts just to hear them, and a couple of movie review podcasts, all duos, trying to get that dynamic. What happens? How do they work? Sort of thing. And some of them are really cool, very intelligent, everything else, but almost all of them don't do what we do. In other words, there's a lot of pre-prep discussion and there's a lot of post work from what I have seen in references that they'll make. They'll say, there's obviously a cut. And they'll say, yeah, we had to lose that section right there because it just didn't work for us at all, which is done in post and they added it in.
That's funny. That's almost like comedy.
Yeah. And it's kind of, okay, good bridge there. But it was interesting that, for those of you who are new and just listening or watching the podcast now, Tim and I pick the titles and we do our own research on our own, get together, and this is the first time we're hearing each other's reactions and each other's comments. We don't share notes. We don't say, okay, you talk about this and then I'll talk about that or whatever. It's all a lot of improv on our part, which I think keeps it unique and fresh. You constantly surprise me with reactions or thoughts or things, and hopefully I'm doing the same with you.
Absolutely.
Sort of thing.
I think that we also do our own pre and post work that we've divvied up in some cases or just organically, and we've streamlined it. We've streamlined it mainly because we don't want to be doing it, for a long amount of time, as far as editing and prep to me is actually longer usually than editing.
Yes. And I also don't want it, I don't think either of us want it to seem false or scripted or propagandized. It's another reason why, sad or true or however you want to look at it, we also don't have sponsors. We don't start our podcast with a big sponsor role. We don't interrupt halfway through and say, now for a word from our sponsor, whatever. That could be bad in the long run, but
no, we're just going to flood the podcast world until they take notice.
That's right. We're just going to keep growing inch by inch. We're like an insidious sort of plague that kind of takes over a small town or something. Yeah. Speaking of insidious plagues taking over,
before you segue, I have to mention one quick thing. Since you said that I hit it on comedy, and then you started talking about true crime podcast. Have you watched Murders in the Building yet?
I have not, but 2 different people have recommended it to me already.
Very funny. Martin Short and Steve Martin.
Did I mention the last podcast that I heard them on? Wait, don't tell me. I heard Martin Short. Did I tell you that story? I thought I did in the last podcast. Well, I was listening to, one of my regulars on NPR is Wait, Don't Tell Me every Saturday. It's their trivia, their news trivia. And they always have a comedian or a personality or whatever that plays one section of games with them. And 2 weeks ago, it was Martin Short. And so he was talking about, shooting that series and how much fun it was with Selena Gomez and
Steve Martin.
Steve Martin.
And Steve and some other guy created it too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But so they ask him, do you ever crack each other up and all that kind of stuff? And he goes, oh, of course, constantly, all the time. He goes, but some of the funniest things are things that don't happen on camera. And so the host goes, well, like what? So please tell us, share us a secret. And he goes, well, the funniest thing that happened in that entire production was I walked in one day and Selena is reading the lyrics of WAP to Stephen. And I went, what?
Oh, that's great.
And he said, oh, yes, he is reading every word of the lyrics to him. And Stephen is just aghast and looking over at me and going, I can't even believe that this.
Right.
And the host goes, well, why didn't she just show him the video? And she said, I asked Selena that. She said, I tried, but he couldn't understand the lyrics, so I have to read them to him.
I had to read them to him. That's great.
Yeah.
Anyway, this premise of this show is based on those true crime podcasts.
Oh, hugely popular. Hugely popular.
And so, but they're only going to do murders that occur in their building.
In the building, yeah. So
yeah, it's pretty funny. Martin Short makes me laugh all the time. I mean, even Steve Martin does too. But I was watching one last night where he was interviewing some guy and he was eating a popsicle at the same time. And like at the most inopportune times, he would just go, brain freeze, and grab his head. Anyway, we segued way too long in the world of podcast and comedy. So why not jump in the time machine and go back to 1979 and television then?
And television, in which is pretty comedic. No, just
unintentionally
funny. Yes.
Yeah. We are on the second leg of our Stephen King Christmas extravaganza.
Act 2. Yes.
Act 2 with the second Stephen King movie ever made. 1979's television miniseries, Salem's Lot.
Salem's Lot. No apostrophe.
No apostrophe in front of the S like there is in the book. Because those of you that are in the know, it's actually Jerusalem's Lot. Salem's Lot is short for that. Wow. Where to start?
Well, I think we should precept it by saying, why don't we refer to this in the podcast as a movie, even though it was technically a mini series, and there was a week, not just like your Roots, every night miniseries. This was a week later, part 2. So it was But I think it was designed and it was intended by Toby and Richard Kobritz to be a one long movie. So why don't we, for semantics sake, refer to it as a movie, even though it's a miniseries.
Actually, it was intended to be a short movie overseas. They filmed it long for over here and then edited it for theatrical release overseas.
And had separate scenes that they did at the same time, shooting the same time. I read that in production. Yeah. Do you want a synopsis of it? It's based on a novel, right? You know, so.
It is based on a novel. It's about a novelist that returns to his hometown to write a book about a house he's obsessed with, a somewhat haunted house known as the Marston House, of which he swears he may have seen a ghost when he was a kid. A guy named Hubie Marston hung himself in there, and apparently Ben swears he saw him open his eyes, even though he was hanging. But at the same time Ben returns to his hometown, some odd shenanigans are going on with someone else coming to the town. A guy named Straker opens a antique store and has a mysterious crate delivered to the Marston House, which he is now occupying to Ben's horror because it's just an old dilapidated house. And it turns out that there might be the king of vampires in that crate now. And all of a sudden, vampirism is spreading like a plague throughout Salem's Lot, virtually in nights. Slowly, the town is just turning into a town full of vampires. And that is basically the premise. I have huge history with this novel, or at least a very sentimental one. What about you?
Me too. This was the first Stephen King I read.
Me too.
I think we discussed it last week when we did Carrie, but although Carrie had come out earlier, this was the first I'd heard of Stephen King. And mostly I was attracted to the book cover. I thought it was really interesting and cool. And I liked I love the story because vampires are my favorite monster. Zombies are yours. Vampires are mine. And I liked what he did with it and his quote reimagining of Dracula. What would it be like if Dracula came to a small town, you know, kind of thing. I loved the plotting.
In his words.
Yeah. I loved the plotting of it. I thought that was really cool. And really fell in love with the book. So when I heard they were making it into a miniseries, I was obviously really excited. Did you watch it live in '79 in November?
Oh yeah.
Huh? I did too. I did too.
I probably read it around 1977. I got turned on to King early as a child, and this is a memory here. My mother read it before me, probably to see if it was suitable, even though she let me read Jaws at an early age. And at one point I was, I don't know, doing something on the floor, playing with something, crayons, toys, whatever. And my mother screamed and threw the book across the room. And that was the scene where Marjorie Glick sits up on the gurney in the morgue.
Okay.
Yeah. And I said, "Ooh, I think I need to read that book." So
trying to stay with the book. There are so many great scenes in this book. If you were listening or watching us and you like horror literature, go back and read Salem's Lot. It really is I haven't read it in a few decades, but I read it a few times.
Me too.
And it is a very, very well-structured, great piece of horror fiction. I remember liking the prologue and the epilogue in the novel. However, I don't like the prologue and the epilogue in the movie or miniseries.
It's very cheesy.
Well, you know, you kind of forget that prologue. There's so much texture to the book and so many characters. I mean, it's a very Stephen King thing of a small town with a lot of stories. And he likes
secrets.
And he tells you all of them. And it's all this. And it's really interesting to see some of the personal vengeance that happens, some of the, you know, the fate that transcends on certain characters and all of that. But you forget about the whole and it's in Mexico, I think, not Guatemala in the
Right.
novel.
Mhm.
But you kind of forget that. So by the time, there's still suspense for Ben and suspense for Mark Petrie in the novel, whereas there is none in the series because we already saw that they live. So nothing's going to happen to them. We know
Mhm.
because it's only been an hour since we saw them in Guatemala, sort of thing.
With their magic,
With their
glowing holy
magic
water.
holy glow. Yeah.
Yeah,
I was going to ask
exactly.
you about that. What
I
in
don't
any
know.
realm ever says that holy water will glow when vampires get near it? I mean, even Robert Rodriguez doesn't do that. So, I mean,
I'm
whatever.
jotting keys down. Another little tidbit of history that you may not remember because you actually weren't there in person, but you and I went to a horror writing. It was some kind of weird convention called Satyricon at the Hyatt Regency around 1982. And Stephen King and Peter Straub were both there.
Yes, I remember that.
It was before conventions were big. We actually talked about this on a bonus episode of the podcast several years ago.
I think so.
Yeah, I think it's on Patreon. It was when conventions were small. I swear there wasn't 200 people there. Would you think?
I wouldn't think so. It was, although it did have a lot of the tropes of conferences. It had the hospitality suite. It had some form of costume thing, which we didn't go to. I don't remember going to that, but I remember seeing costumed people. But it was mostly a literature thing because weren't they reading Ghost Story or something? They were reading.
I think it was Shadowlands, and Pet Cemetery had not come out yet, but I had the program with an excerpt from Pet Cemetery in it called something about Timmy Baterman.
Right.
And anyway, the point I'm getting at is that Stephen King, once he got really, really popular, couldn't do these conventions anymore. So it was before he was that huge. So we got to meet him and hang out with, well, not really hang out with him, but they would mingle with the crowd. And it was at a time, I don't know about Straub, but it was at a time when King was indulging in a lot of chemicals and booze.
Oh, yeah.
And Straub was, I remember seeing him walk around, not with a margarita, but with a pitcher of margaritas.
A pitcher.
Drinking out of the pitcher of margaritas. And so they were kind of young and full of themselves a little bit.
Yeah.
And you slept late one morning. Yes. I got up, went to eat at the little restaurant out in, it was one of those open air things. There was a little restaurant within the lobby. You could see across the lobby. And I saw King and I was like, holy shit. And he had wet, stringy hair. He had just got out of the shower and he went and he sat on a couch. And of course, people were already starting to gather around him. So I thought, well, I will go get my book signed. I had a copy of Dead Zone, like a paperback. I still have it. And I walked over and I waited. And each person was kind of talking to him as he signed. And I made the dreaded mistake of trashing the Salem's Lot movie to him. And he did not like it. He defended it. And I came at him a little bit, young little whippersnapper me.
You whippersnapper you?
I was like, they turned Barlow into this monster. They couldn't even talk. How could you like that or whatever? And anyway, I have since discovered when doing preparation for this episode, that is the biggest complaint that everyone has about this movie, is that they changed that aspect of the book. So it wasn't just me, Mr. King. So there.
No, I think that's a very valid point. I did read in doing research that he did support that and said, yeah, that's fine. That's okay. And I think he may have thought that, I'm supposing here, but I'm thinking he may have thought that because that adds a shock value.
It did. It made it scary.
But to me, it wasn't that scary. Barlow never scared me in the original series. What scared me were well, we'll talk about when we get to scenes.
Right.
Interesting that he was still defending it at that time.
He was.
Because
and
that makes sense.
Well, in my notes, I read that the reason they did it mainly was because of Badham's Dracula and Werner Herzog's Nosferatu both coming out theatrically, and they were no. I'm sorry, I'm getting my notes mixed up. But
no, they both came out in 79. 79 was a big vampire year.
Yeah, they did.
Because you had Nosferatu, the remake, Dracula, the remake with Frank Langella, and then you had this.
Yeah. Actually, I was getting it mixed up with something else about George Romero that I was going to mention later. No, what I meant to say is that there were Draculas out there that were suave and romantic and articulate, and they decided that they would be different and go with something that wasn't.
Right. But that wasn't the intent. I mean, to me, that's a huge change in the original work.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've talked before about adaptations and, decisions that people make when, it's a different medium. You have to do it different. You have to tell the story differently, so to speak. But you don't change the core elements of the story, in my opinion, or the characters. It's, I just don't. Some of the decisions, we'll get into it, I'm sure, when we go through scenes and just our watch notes, but some of the decisions that they made, whether it was the director, Tobe Hooper, or the writer or the producer, who obviously had a large hand in this from what I have read.
That's what I think. Yeah.
Some of the decisions they made were not good and defeated the purpose of the original the original literature, I think.
Yeah.
So, I had not watched this probably in 20 years. I had not seen this, and watching it again was very, very unique for me because I remember not liking it when I first saw it, mostly because I liked the novel so much. And I remember not liking it. And then watching this, I'm going, now I know why I didn't like it. So,
I mean, but it is iconic. There are iconic shots in this movie that you remember, which is kind of interesting to me, even though it stars, a 70s, television star.
Well, what about any other production-y things you want to do, or do you want to go to cast?
Yeah, actually, I do have a few. You mentioned Kobritz. He was a big producer. There was also a producer named John Calley who wanted Peter Weir to direct it.
Yeah.
Which I found really strange because has Peter Weir ever done a horror movie? I don't think so.
No. Terrible choice. That would have been a bad choice.
So Richard went with Tobe because he saw Texas Chainsaw Massacre and felt like Tobe would be the right person. However, nothing about this movie looks like Tobe Hooper to me, really.
No, the only thing that looks like Tobe Hooper to me is the death of the doctor. That's very Tobe Hooper to me.
Okay. Yeah.
The inside of the Marston House, and it looks like it could have been the other branch from Texas.
It does, because there's a whole bunch of antlers on the wall. Yeah. You're right.
Filth and dirt everywhere over the floor, stuff in the air, and a bunch of antlers. So I was going, okay, there's Tobe, but none of the rest of it. No, none of the rest of it.
Let's venture just a week back when we were talking about a certain person. As far as writers, we know Stephen King wrote the book. The screenplay was written by Paul Monish. He's a TV writer and producer. He's a better producer than he is a writer. I'll tell you that right now.
Because he produced Carrie.
Well, he wrote the first screenplay of Carrie too. Apparently they didn't go with that one.
Nope.
So we got a little bit of incestuous stuff going on here. He did produce Big Trouble in Little China and Slaughterhouse-5 and Carrie, which are all great productions.
Yeah. As a producer, he's got it. You know where he came from? I found out, ironically, you know where he came from?
No.
Peyton Place. He was one of the.
Yes, I did know that.
He was one of the creators and producers of Peyton Place, which is ironic that this has always been called Peyton Place meets Dracula. Kind of thing.
And, but I think they made it a little too literal. And I wonder sometimes because it's almost boring in places.
Oh, it's very boring in a lot of places. Oh my gosh.
I was being nice.
No, don't be nice. It's not. It's very well. And I've got a little bit of background on writers too, because when they first imagined it, they wanted it to be a movie, an actual motion picture, and they had a bunch of writers try different versions of it, including Stephen King. He did a version. I've got Larry Cohen, the wonderful It's Alive guy, did a version. Robert Gretchen, who was another television writer, or movie writer, did a version. And so did one of your favorites, Robert Bloch.
Robert Bloch was someone they wanted to get, but I read that he didn't.
Oh, okay. My notes say that he actually did a version because Paul Monash actually had trouble with the Writers Guild after it was and had to go through arbitration once the movie was released because so many of these other writers were saying, hey, that was in my version. And he had to say, because it's in the novel, you dumbass. Of course it's in your version.
It's so funny. Usually our research is the same, but we're coming at it from different angles. And this is great because I have some to add to that. I read that they wanted Robert Bloch, but they couldn't get him. Mm-hmm. And that they got Larry Cohen, but they didn't like his version of it.
Of course not.
But he tried to sue them to get credit, but they wouldn't let him have credit at all. Yep. So what did he do? He went and did the sequel, which is supposedly one of the worst sequels ever made.
Just watching the, I remember watching it because it does have two things or three elements of the, no, that's totally different. I have not watched Return. I watched the 2004 remake.
Oh, Rob Lowe one.
The Rob Lowe one, yes. But the Return, no, just watching the trailer for it with that dude that was always in Larry Cohen movies.
Moriarty.
Yeah. And it looks terrible. It just looks so bad.
Yeah. And before we continue, this is the Larry Cohen, folks, that we were talking about last week. That is not Lawrence Cohen. This is the Larry Cohen known for It's Alive and The Stuff and several other cult movies.
Q, wasn't it Q? It was about a dragon.
God told me to or something. Yeah.
He was terrible. He's big schlock 70s and 80s director. Yes.
Right. Apologies to our listener out there that wanted us to do The Stuff. Your name escapes me at the moment, but we may still do it. I don't know.
We may still,
It's a Larry Cohen movie, though. Anyway,
it is.
So there's a lot of weirdness going on with the writing here. And full circle, I mentioned John Badham and his version of Dracula and Herzog's version of Nosferatu. The reason I brought that up was because of this note. Director George Romero was supposed to do this movie. Mm-hmm. But when they saw that those two other big vampire movies were hitting the silver screen, that's when they decided to take it to television. And Romero's like, I'm out because it's too restrictive.
Yep. I read that too, that he said, no, I can't, with those kind of censors and everything, I can't do it.
Now, picture this. George Romero directs a script written by Robert Bloch. Wow. And Stephen King.
That probably would have worked, I think. And then you would have had Romero going down in history as not only zombies, but vampires.
Yeah.
Would have been interesting. I think he would have had a much better, based on Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead and how, his, as we've talked, I think when we did Night of the Living Dead, his view of society and the way he threads it into his films. And I think
even older stuff like The Crazies and things as well.
He would have been a great choice for Salem's Lot. I think that would have been,
the town sad, knew its secrets or something. What was that tagline that used to be on the paperback? The town
had secrets. Yeah.
And something about the sucking sounds. The sound of a child and the sucking sounds. I used to love that tag. It was great.
Yeah. Tobe Hooper, I think, was an interesting choice, but evidently he was either totally out of his element with his director of photography and trying to make it a television thing, or he just is a hack and a one-note hack, because I still don't think he did Poltergeist. I think that was Spielberg. And I still, and he had just gotten fired off of something right before Kubrick hired him. So
he was kind of a stoner. I mean, he probably wasn't very efficient.
I think the issues in this script, in this movie, all the way through, are writing and directing, all the way through it. Pacing is horrible in this movie. The
music is the pits. It is
oh my
so
God. Okay.
bad.
I've got notes on that. So they wanted Kubrick's wanted Romero, and he wanted Tobe Hooper, and he both wanted Bernard Herrmann to do the score.
I could see that.
But they couldn't get Bernard Herrmann to do the score, so they got the next best thing, his arranger, who had worked with him for 20 years or something like that. And his name was Harry Suckman, which I call Suckman because he sucked. But anyway, Harry Suckman wanted to give it this very Bernard Herrmann feel. So the violins and the huge orchestration and all of this, throbbing downbeat kind of stuff. It does not work anywhere in this entire movie. There's not one sequence that I thought the music worked.
Well, first of all, the music in the show is actually slow and boring, but the music of the title credits sounds exactly like Lost in Space. When I listen to it, I'm like, dun, 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 dun.
Yeah.
What is this?
That's a key I missed, but I can agree with you on it. Yes. Heavily influenced by that late 60s sound.
Television sound.
Yeah.
It was very everything about this reeks of television. Just reeks.
Oh my gosh. Using that I found out that where is it? It's essentially a key, but we can talk about it. The font. Mm-hmm. Ironically, the font that they used was from West Side Story. I thought you would appreciate that.
Yeah, I knew that.
And the transitions of the font slowly building in chunks.
Yeah,
it's from The Birds, from Saul Bass.
Right. It's
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 terrible.
some guy named Pollock, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, Saul Bass did the animation. But
it's like a Jackson Pollock effect with its
Jackson Pollock with the splatters on it, because it's just, the music doesn't help them at all. Try to build any kind of suspense.
No, I actually have in my notes that this movie could have actually been better if it had better music. There are parts of this movie that would have probably worked had the music been better.
I think, yes, I would agree. Yeah. I think parts of it and a massive re-edit would have helped. He was so, I think they were truncated almost in this 2-part 90-minute each sort of format that they did, because when you watch it, and by the way, if you are looking for it, don't get the edited for television later version. Look for the 3-hour version, because that's the original. The original ended with Danny Glick doing his sit-up out of the casket. That was the last shot. And then it went to credits, and then we had to wait a week.
I was wondering. I'm glad you reminded me, because I didn't know. I didn't look that up.
So that's where and that's why that shot looks so fake in the movie, and they hold on it and go to a freeze frame and hold on it way too long.
Yeah.
And you're going, what? And it's because that was the last image for a week, come back. And that to me is what I remember. That's one of the scary moments in the movie that I liked when I watched it the first time. And I went, okay, that worked. Yeah, jump up out of the coffin there. That was scary. But up until then, the pace is so incredibly slow. And then it gets to that, and suddenly that last half, we're truncating huge chunks of the book and just slamming into the next one without any kind of build or suspense or anything. And things just don't make sense in a lot of places.
The novel, I mentioned that tag, something about the town news secrets or whatever. Mm-hmm. It basically was because we get to know all these minor characters in the town in the book because of not so great things happening, like whether a guy's abusing his wife or abusing his child, or, or sleeping around with someone. Yeah, whatever. And some of that stuff they just, I guess, couldn't show on television. And what they did show was really diluted, like the whole thing with Larry Crockett and what's his face,
Boom Boom
wife. Yeah, and in those really hot red satin boxer shorts.
Ooh, wow.
Those things.
Yeah,
But like in the
I
book,
like
I
the
think
fact
he had
that
to put
Sonny
the gun in his mouth. They
Oh,
couldn't do
he had
that
to-
on TV. It
in
was
the
too violent.
book, if I remember correctly, in the book, well, I do like in the movie, Sonny goes, I like them shorts you're wearing there, anyway. But in the book, from what I remember, he makes him kneel down and put it in his mouth.
Yeah.
It's pretty graphic.
It's pretty phallic.
and scary,
Yeah.
terrifying. You are really put in Sonny Crockett's, in Crockett's, Sonny Crockett. That's the freaking dude from.
It's Larry Crockett and then whoever the guy is that puts the gun on him.
Right. And his name is Sonny, but I can't remember the last name. But anyway, but yeah, Sonny Crockett is like what, Miami Vice? Yeah. Anyway.
Oh yeah, you may be right.
So but there's vengeance.
His name is Cully Sawyer. It's Cully and Bonnie.
Cully, that's it. So but there's vengeance that comes out of that in the novel that we don't see at all in the miniseries. I'm going, why did we waste so much time on this buildup with nothing? Nothing happens. Crockett dies and never comes back, even though he was obviously attacked by the vampire.
Not unless he's in that room at the end and you just don't see him. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And in the book, he shits himself. I remember that.
Well, then he comes back to Cully after it because as a vampire, and that's a great scene because it's like, now I'm here for your wife, kind of thing.
That's right.
And it's really,
now I want to read it again.
there's so many, you want to talk about scenes, there's some great scenes that
absolutely
did translate, I think, to I'm so frustrated because there are great scenes in the novel that they did have in this, but they just weren't done well enough.
No.
But
there are still, we can definitely talk about scenes. There's iconic imagery in this film that will live with you forever.
Okay. Yes. So what would you think those are? What, in your opinion? Because I'm pretty sure we'll agree.
Mike Ryerson in the rocking chair upstairs in Burke's house.
Just rocking and with the eyes.
Mm-hmm. And he's so subtle. So subtle.
Yeah.
That's terrifying. Any of the scenes where the boys are outside scratching on the windows.
Oh my gosh.
Floating outside.
Both of those. Although my notes say, oh my God, does every place in this town, including the hospital, have the biggest freaking windows in the world? They're huge.
Well, they had to because of the effect. And that's what makes the scene work so well.
But it works. It works. As a matter of fact, this came out in November of 79. We were working on
Evil Dead
at the time. And Sam used that.
Yeah.
Except his was a 2x4 through the window, but it was the same thing. Same
to
premise.
give the appearance of floating without strings.
Yeah.
And not only floating, they come in the window.
And come down.
Yeah, it's amazing. It still
looks awesome.
gives me chills to watch it.
Yeah. Okay. We're 2 for 2. I would definitely agree with both of those. Yeah.
Another one, just for sentimental reasons and because of my mother, would be Marjorie in the morgue again. Just not necessarily the execution of getting rid of her, but the cutbacks between Ben and the sheet over the corpse and waiting for it to move. Although
I think they blew it because they do her arm first before she sits up. And what I remember from the book and what terrified me the most was the sitting up, and I was going, if that had been done like Halloween, and in just one shot, he had turned to finish his little, tongue depressor crosses, and you'd see her in the background sit up, I would have freaked out.
Yeah.
But instead they do that whole close up with music.
She's calling Danny.
Oh yeah.
Danny.
Yeah. Okay. I'll half give you that one. I don't agree with that one, but I sort of.
All right. You go then. You name one.
Danny Glick sitting up in the casket. Even though we knew it would happen.
Scare.
It's a jump scare that works.
But they use it twice. They do it with Barlow too.
They do it with Barlow too.
Yeah.
None of that works with me. None of Court Barlow works for me.
I just thought.
The one that gets me, and it got me this time too. And I went, oh my God, I'd forgotten about that. But oh my God, it's when Ben is staking Barlow and Matt is in front of that door, the crawl space, and they're coming from the background. I went, holy crap. That's one of my favorite moments in this novel. I mean, in this movie, because it still got me this many years later. I was going, okay, now that, Toby, is scary. Why? Because you're showing us stuff that we know that they don't. And the rest of this freaking movie, you have shown us stuff we already know.
Right.
And so it's not suspenseful. But seeing Ryerson and Danny crawling toward them, it reminded me one of the things that's
Ned
always
Tibbetts, I think it's Ned. Yeah.
One of the things that's always imprinted me from the book that really got to me, because, in the book, they try to go around killing as many of them as they can before they leave town. And they talk about hearing scratching in the crawl spaces below houses and then setting them on fire and watching them crawl out like rats.
Right.
So that they can
die in the sun. Yeah.
And die in the sun and everything. And I was going, yes, see this is what that reminded me of. This is a way to tell that and adapt it in a way that's creepy. Man, it got to me still.
And
I was going,
if you could do it now on television and you could do it really well. Back then, God, I don't know that you could show some of that stuff.
I've got, it's precedent setting, Tim, because this is one that I would say, okay, if Mike Flanagan said he was remaking this, I'd be all for it. Go ahead.
Oh, absolutely, man.
Oh my
absolutely.
God. He would. Well, and, instead they'll probably give it, if they ever redid it, they'll give it to, Eli Roth or,
no,
they'll give it to that dude that Nicotero. He'll do it and he'll suck.
I don't think Steve knows Greg very well.
Or what's the insidious guy? That Wang
James Wan. I don't know, and I am wrong. I think I looked that up, and we were both wrong last week. I can't remember. James Wan is pretty well respected, and he did not direct all those movies that we confuse with The Conjuring and Insidious and Annabelle.
Well, Malignant is the new one. Malignant, and some by the same guy that did Insidious. So that's all I know. We don't care. But anyway, this one, if it was redone by the right director and it really took the source material, which is still scary if you read it today, would work for me. I would support a remake in that regard. Even if you wanted to do it on Netflix as a 3-part series or something, and show some of this, small town.
Honestly, you could probably do it in 8 parts and just make them an hour each.
Yeah,
you could, and it would give it the right length, and you'd be able to find the right climax
that would work.
Tags and stuff that.
Please
would work,
don't.
I would think.
Don't turn the lead monster into the lead vampire into a monster.
Well, let's all right. We just named the iconic scenes from the film. What scenes stick out to you from the book?
The fact that, it's Kingisms all the way through it. It kind of leads to a key for it. But I love the fact that Mark used his little Aurora model cross to stop Danny Glick. I thought that imprinted me in the book, and it's in the movie too, but it doesn't work as well for me. Father Callahan, I really liked in the novel, and I hate him in this series.
He's hardly in it, and he's a major character.
He's a huge character, and he's a huge character in King mythos. I mean, he's in Dark Tower and everything. And the fact that he was so, because to me, I felt what he did in the novel that is not in this is it's not just Ben Mears' story. It's all of this town's story. And I understand, for film's sake, we need to truncate that into like a personal hero journey or whatever. Yeah, maybe. But I think we've seen in like Legend of Hill House and a couple of the other series that are out there that you could tell multi-layered stories with multiple characters, personal stories happening in this. And that's what King did well in the novel that I think they missed in this. Seeing the revenge. Yeah, seeing their revenge, seeing the whole, there's one where one of the big scenes that I loved and still remember from the movie.
I know what you're going to say.
That is not in this, but is in the remake. by the way, is
Yeah.
the school bus. The school bus scared the bejesus out of me when I was a kid reading
It's
it.
because the bus driver was a real asshole, and then all of a
The
sudden,
bus
all the
driver is a
vampire kids.
jerk. He's
Yeah.
abusive. He puts kids out on the side of the road for no reason. He's just a drunk ass. He's a great Stephen King character.
Yeah.
And the scene in the book where he hears noise outside and he grabs his shotgun, and he looks out and there's movement in his bus. He's like, "Those damn kids." And he goes out there and looks, and the whole bus is full of vampire kids. I was going,
They shut the doors, man, with him in there. Yeah.
and
yeah.
shred him. I was going, yeah. It's those moments that, no, does that further the hero's plot? No, but does it further the town becoming malignant and a plague? Yeah.
Mhm.
And should have been in there.
Yeah.
Any
there's-
others from you from the book?
Absolutely. And the one I thought you were going to mention is when Ben gets to the house and Barlow's left him the note on the
Oh,
staircase.
see, well, I got that in my watch notes. I'm going, okay, one of my favorite moments in the book, and you didn't even do it. As a matter of
No.
fact, you made it even worse by
It's the one
pandering
where he
and
says,
cutting
"Oh,
the
by the way,
stairs.
Ben, I've left a little surprise for you in the basement."
Left a surprise for you in the basement. Yeah.
And it's Susan.
And
Oh.
it's Susan. He turned his girlfriend,
Yeah, and they have to kill her. They have to cut her head off and turn it upside
yeah.
down in the coffin.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, my
Oh,
God.
yeah.
It's
You know, and
brutal.
it's brutal. And I read that Tobe Hooper was the one that made the choice to make that part of the epilogue rather than where it is in the timing of the
It's
book. And I went,
terrible.
no, because what makes Ben so pursuant on, I'm going to destroy the whole freaking town now,
Mhm.
is the fact that he has nothing to lose. She's gone,
Mhm.
you know. Plus the fact that, you know, we do that slow freaking close up of the basement burning, and we keep getting tighter, and we're hearing her scream. I mean, we're hearing a woman scream. I'm assuming it's Susan because that's where we left her, right? And then she's all beautiful and gorgeous. Nobody else is beautiful and gorgeous. Nobody else changes. You know, everybody
that's
still
right.
looks.
They all get all ugly looking. Yeah.
Yeah, they're all blue. They're bad Dawn of the Dead zombies. You
Yeah,
know, they all
yeah.
turn blue with fangs, and she's beautiful with the shiny eye. I mean, this makes no sense. It doesn't work with the rest of your story, you know. Anyway,
Well, okay. So we've talked about great scenes in the movie and great
Yep.
scenes from the book. What are scenes in the movie that were better in the book? That's another category for you.
again,
I'll tell
it's
you,
a
the one that's I think of.
yeah. You go.
is-
Go.
It's the one where Mike Ryerson and Ned are driving the crate in the truck, and that they know they're like something's wrong, and they know it, and they're terrified, and they can't figure out what it is, but there's
Mhm.
like this cold presence behind them while they're delivering that crate to the Marston house. Then you've got the
Mhm.
whole taking it down there, forgetting to lock the door or whatever, and having to go back. I mean, yeah, all that stuff.
Yeah. That was good.
Much better in the book.
Much better in the book. I think what was better? Are we saying what's better in the book than in the miniseries, or what's better?
I'm
in
saying
the
they
miniseries than the book?
included it, but it's still better in the book.
Oh yeah, all of that. Well,
I
the
can tell you
Marston
another one.
story. The Marston story is much better
Yeah,
in the
why
book.
not
And
show
again,
Hubie?
you could have had, if you turn this into a, an 8-part Netflix thing, you could have an entire episode that's just Hubie Marston
Mhm.
and the family and everything, because supposedly he was a pedophile, child killer, killed his
Gangster.
maid and his wife,
Mhm.
then hung himself. Supposedly Ben went up there and saw his ghost. You
They
could,
saw a rotten corpse open its eyes hanging from the ceiling. I mean,
even
that
in my
scene alone
notes,
scared me more than anything in the book, I think.
right. And in my
Yeah.
notes, I'm going, okay, Toby, you blew an opportunity. I don't want to see David Soul tell this story. I want to see this story.
Mhm.
And you could have cut from their little nice domestic over in the restaurant to a flashback of him actually as a kid doing that, and it would have been terrifying. But they didn't. They just lost the whole King layered this novel so well and the only hint they have of it is having Ben Mears constantly state, do you think a place can be inherently evil?
Or
Do you think
in
a
the house on the
place
hill?
can draw evil? That house on the hill.
Mhm.
I'm going, oh my gosh,
I'm so glad we're doing this for Christmas. This is awesome.
You think that tree could be evil with a star on top of it? No, but yeah, I mean, it's just, both of us love Stephen King. I think you more than I, but we definitely respect and love his work and what he's done, even the low parts. And we liked Tobe Hooper. I mean, both of us talked about Chainsaw and how effective it was.
Mm-hmm.
This is just such a shame, such a missed opportunity it could have been something terrifying.
And it's got fucking James Mason in it.
Okay. Well, yeah, great segue to cast, because I do like certain elements of the casting of it. James Mason being probably the standout. James Mason and Lou Ayres probably are my two favorite. I really like Lou Ayres a lot. I've liked him since Quester tapes, but I like him.
I was going to say, I didn't know much of him. He's like a 1940s actor that was known for Dr. Kildare.
But he, to me, is one of the only ones. He's the only one that struck me as that's the character I read in the book. Mm-hmm. And when I reread the novel after I'd read this, after I've seen the miniseries, I still pictured him in that role.
But I don't know if you realize.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if you realize, but they did. You kept saying truncate. They combined characters and chunk characters out, like not Ed Norton. That's the Honeymooners. Sue Norton's dad is not the guy in the book that Ben pairs up with.
It's the
another
doctor,
guy,
right? It's the doctor.
Yeah, it's like a younger guy, and then he's got the college, or not the college, but the high school teacher, which is who you're talking about, Lou Ayres. Burke.
Yes.
Is his name.
Burke.
So there was some other guy that's not even in this that they kind of just slipped Sue's father into that role.
Yeah, there's the doctor that was supposed to be, because he's the one that gets the knives on the staircase.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing.
Depressors.
Yeah. And that's another thing they cut, and not only cut, they pandered to us by showing stairs cut off. And I was going, what? I also love the flip twist in the novel that is not in this, which is, they go to the Marston House. Of course, you're going to go fight Straker and Barlow on their home turf and and you get there. The only thing you find is frickin' Susan, and you have to kill her because he's somewhere else. And they finally realize he's in Evie's boarding house. He's been living underneath where Ben was sleeping.
Right.
And that's what made it even scarier.
Yeah.
But no, we didn't do that. But Lou Ayres is perfect as the teacher, as Burke, because I thought he was a great, because he's supposed to be older. He dies of a heart attack. He's supposed to be the one that actually buys into Ben's fears of the vampirism and everything else. The first one to really, be an ally, I think. I thought Lance Kerwin did fine as Mark Petrie. His haircut has always thrown me off, but it's because I had one very similar.
McNichol. They're very similar.
Bonnie Bedelia is fantastic.
I love Bonnie. She's one of my favorites.
Her inflections in this work. She's really, really good. I love her apprehension going down. I just wish she had. I wish they hadn't wasted her. I think it would have been much better to have her before the climax rather than after.
I just thought of another scene that's better in the book than it is in the movie, and it's the scene where Mike Ryerson's burying Danny Glick. And he gets obsessed with him. He's like, stop staring at me. Stop staring at me. And then he jumps down into the grave. And they do it in the movie. It's just not as effective as it is in the book.
And we don't understand really why. There's a lot of weird psychokinetic stuff that happens that I'm going, we don't know why this is happening yet, so it's not making any sense. Like the crate moving in the truck and the wind when little boy Glick, I forgot his name. It's not
Ralphie.
Danny, it's the other one. Ralphie. And Straker can suddenly pick a grown man up, and he's like really super strong, but we haven't seen that in any other reference. But
well, he picked
anyway.
up Ralphie Glick, whose body like reduced in half by size. Did you notice that?
Oh yeah. I
was like,
Saw
wait a
that.
minute, that's that little kid. It looks like a cocoon.
Yeah. He was just he was teeny.
He carries that in and then cuts open the bag and the body's in it. And I'm like, that bag's not as big as that body.
No, not at all. Feet would have been sticking out or something.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
weird.
not right.
It was very, very weird.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we keep jumping back into scenes, but I guess we'll head toward cast.
Yes.
I don't know if you know this. Ooh, we're going long on this one too.
We will.
This cast has not one, not two, not three, not four, but 5 Star Trek the original series alums in it.
Yep.
And I was like, this is amazing. I don't think we've ever had this before.
I don't think any movie ever has.
Well, it's because it's a television movie in the late 70s.
And he cast a lot of television and movie actors and actresses. Yeah.
He did.
Yeah.
The first would be the lead, Ben himself, played by David Soul. Most people know him as Hutch of the show Starsky and Hutch.
Yeah.
He's a Norwegian
got a cool car,
actor, Mac. And
they're Norwegian, man.
I wondered, I got curious as to what he was doing now. And apparently in the 90s, he moved to London and became a stage actor and an expatriate. He's a British citizen now. So
supposedly done a lot of theater though. Lots of theater. Yeah.
And I don't dislike him. He's just not right. But who Stephen King had originally envisioned, I don't think is right either. He thought Ben Gazzara should play him.
Yeah, I thought that too, and went, no, I pictured him younger than Ben Gazzara, but not as, I guess, flippanty maybe as David Soul. I definitely didn't picture Rob Lowe when I read the novel. But
I didn't really picture anybody. Usually I have like just a vague image in my head of what it is.
Yeah.
I don't have anything else on David Soul except that he's been married 5 times and has 6 kids. Damn.
Well, okay then. It's prolific.
James Mason jumped at the chance to play Straker. He wanted to play a servant of evil, loving the script. I thought that was funny. He was also Richard Cobert's first choice as Straker. So they got fortunate there.
He should have been.
Yeah. And we know him, of course, from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which we've already covered here on this very podcast, as well as other classics like Lolita and North by Northwest and on and on.
Yep. Well, he also has the distinction because 2 of the big influences, according to Kubrick and Tobe Hooper, for this movie were Alfred Hitchcock and Stanley Kubrick. And James Mason actually has worked with both of them.
That's true.
So
that is very true. And there is a lot of Hitchcock tribute to this.
Oh yeah. I mean, Hooper said one of the big key, I guess, for him is he wanted this to feel like the Alfred Hitchcock Hour. He wanted it to have that mystery suspense kind of feel to it, which didn't work.
No,
but that's what he wanted.
It's about vampires. It's not about suspense and thriller.
Right. Yep.
It's about horror. Okay. Lance Kerwin. Don't really know much about him. He was a teen heartthrob in the 70s, like always on Teen Beat magazine. He played James at 15, which was a popular show at the time. And then the very next year, they changed the title to James at 16, which I thought was kind of funny. Bonnie Bedelia was Susan Norton, that is. I love her. I mean, I've always liked her in Die Hard as McClane's wife, but I have a special place in my heart for her because she's in my favorite cult movie, Sordid Lives, which is, if you like Greater Tuna, it's along the same lines. It's extremely funny movie, and she's one of the leads in it.
It's based on a play. Based on a play.
Yeah,
it's based on a play. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one. And then I also know her from that Mud Monster movie I watched on television in the late 70s, as well as I don't know, just a lot of stuff. I was surprised to see how old she is. She was a child actress, and actually her first role was a dancer on Playhouse 90 in 1958.
Wow.
I know.
Wow.
I had no idea. But anyway, she's great. You like Lou Ayres.
Mhm.
All I had on him was that he was Dr. Kildare, which was a very classic character in movies in the 1940s.
Mhm.
And you know him from Sci-Fi Later, apparently.
Yes. Well, he actually was in Roddenberry's pilot for the Quester tapes.
Okay.
He was in a really good character actor. I've always liked him.
There's a lot of good character actors in this, but they're all television character actors usually. Julia Cobb is our second Star Trek alumni. She played Yeoman Leslie Thompson in By Any Other Name.
She's the one that gets crushed. She's the one that turns into the dodecahedron and he crushes her. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, in this, she's Bonnie Sawyer and she's having an affair with Larry Crockett.
Boom, boom. Yeah.
Realtor. Anyway, after her, we have Elisha Cook Jr., another Star Trek alum.
Oh, gosh.
Court Martial. He was also in another movie we covered on this podcast, Rosemary's Baby.
Yes. Yes. He played Sam Cogley on Star Trek. And yeah, he was, and he's the drunk, right? Weasel. Yeah.
He is. He plays Weasel. And apparently he was reunited with his co-star from The Killers, that Kubrick movie. I can't remember her name. Yep. I don't know if I have her in here. But anyway, she was his wife in this as well. It was something they did as kind of
Eva. She was the yeah. Mm-hmm. And in the novel, another thing that's so good, one of those side stories is, he comes to take her. Once he's turned, he comes and takes Eva because she was his ex-wife. So,
right. Yeah. Her husband, Cully Sawyer, was played, Bonnie's husband, Cully Sawyer, was played by George Zunza. I think that's how you say that. He's another television character actor.
And that is the worst casting in this movie, I think.
Oh, really? Why makes you say that? Because he looks like Dom DeLuise?
Well, he's a bigger guy. He's doing a really not convincing New England accent. One of only two people that do. Ryerson is the other one. Mm-hmm. Nobody else even attempts it. And him in the book, I just remember as you need to feel he's really threatening from the very beginning.
True.
And he needed to be much more, in my opinion, he needed to be much more of like, what's the truck driving husband in Twin Peaks? That was the key for me. I can't remember his name. Shoot. Why can't I remember?
I can see his face right now. He was in Dune, wasn't he?
No.
Oh, it's not okay. I thought it was the guy that rode the sandworm with.
No, the guy with oh no, he's he owns the gas station.
Oh, okay.
This is the guy that had the ponytail. Who threatened Shelley's.
No, I'm thinking of the sheriff with
Shelley's husband. Shelley's husband. She should have been much more like the one that said new shoes. Should have been much more like anyway. Because from the minute you see him, you're scared of him. He's a thug. He's a bully. You're afraid of him. This guy never struck me as that. Even down to when I've got a shotgun at your face, I'm not getting scary from you. You're not really intimidating me.
Nah.
Sort of thing. So I thought he was the worst cast in the movie. He had done Deer Hunter, and I liked him in Deer Hunter, and I liked him as Cobb in Crimson Tide. He's the XO in Crimson Tide, and he's really good. Mm-hmm. So it's not the actor; it's just he's miscast. I think.
I think you're right. I like him too, and he is a good character actor that has crossed over from television into movies.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Norton, on the other hand, I don't think did. I think he's just on television. He's a character actor. He was on like St. Elsewhere.
Oh my God, he's great.
Horrible comb over. It's
he's
like
great.
He took all his hair and combed it forward or something. Something's going on. Yeah. It's not a bad toupee because it's got too high a mark. There's something going on up there though that bothered me, and it was a different color.
Yeah, he's great in St. Elsewhere. Ed Flanders was a great character actor in St. Elsewhere. Good
Okay.
guy.
Well,
Yeah.
he's Susan's dad. Marjorie Glick was played by Clarissa K. Mason, James Mason's wife.
Yes. I did not know that till I researched this. Yes.
Nepotism at its finest.
Works well. Yeah.
Actually, I like her. I thought she did a good job for a morgue corpse.
Mm-hmm.
And then my favorite actor probably in this entire series, Jeffrey Lewis, played Mike Ryerson.
Yes. Brilliantly.
Love him. I've loved him in everything he's ever done.
I agree.
And this is no exception. He is probably the best thing in this.
His New England accent works.
Mm-hmm.
His character works to go from the great, and what a great Stephen King character. That's a good key. The grave digger in town. It's such a great backstory to him in the novel and the way he progressed. It's so good.
And did they even say Harmony Hill in the movie?
No, never.
And it's in the book. The cemetery is called Harmony Hill.
Yep. Well, you've also got some other ones I've got in casting. You got, Mark's mother is Barbara Babcock, another great television actress. She's pretty good in the 3 frickin' scenes she gets. The same thing with his dad.
Mm-hmm. She's also a Star Trek alum. She's in like 6 episodes because she did a lot of voice work.
Lot.
Mm-hmm.
And his dad, I like the fact that they did hint his dad was almost like the dad in Creep Show kind of thing, the get rid of the comics kind of character, get rid of, you got to grow up, blah, blah, blah. He says something, Mark says something to him at one point about, I like this, Dad, the same way you like working on cars. And he said, yeah, but I can make a living at what I like, and there's just that threat underneath of pretty soon I'm going to throw all this junk out, kind of thing. But it's not there, and there's not the abuse or any abusive relationship or whatever.
I didn't even put that actor on my notes because he didn't have a picture and I didn't know who he was.
Yeah, well, he's done a bunch of television.
Okay. Back to Jeffrey Lewis. For those of you out there that don't know, he is the father of actress Juliette Lewis, and both of them have done scads of work because they're both really, really good. Kenneth McMillan played Constable Gillespie.
Yeah.
Last time we saw him, he was Baron Harkonnen in Dune, flying around in circles and driving me crazy.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, he's doing his very best in the heat of the night constable in this. Yes.
He is, but I do have to say one thing in my research on him, because I was like, I can't believe he's actually in 2 things we watched this year. I did a little more research and found out that, praise Jesus, he played the bartender on the original Dark Shadows.
Really?
Yes.
I did not know that. That is some good trivia.
At the Eagle. Yeah.
Wow.
So I was very happy about that.
And I like that the 2 scenes that he has with James Mason as Straker are almost word for word from the novel too, I read, which is great. And those are both some strong scenes and some good acting in this. I mean, if you're playing opposite James Mason, you better bring your A game. You better bring your game, baby. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Fred Willard, of all people, played Larry Crockett.
Second worst casting in the movie. Yeah.
Well, he's a comedic actor, and so it's really strange seeing him in this, even though at the time he was really known more for Fernwood, that spinoff of Mary Hartman, I think.
Fernwood Tonight. Yep.
But he went on to do, all those crazy Christopher Guest movies, as well as playing one of the in-laws on Modern Family. So, I mean, he's been acting forever. He just died a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
he's been around for a while.
I've even gotten my notes. I was going, okay, he is doing his best to be Herb Tarlick in this movie, even down to Yeah, even down to the plaid jackets and the white shoes and everything. I was going, oh my God.
I can't get past the red boxers. I was telling Dennis about it before I sat down to watch it. I said, I remember this scene because he's not got anything on but red satin boxers. I said, what does that say about me as a child? I remember that.
What are you secretly saying? We don't know. But
I don't
yes.
know, but all I know is that I don't even like satin sheets. I can't imagine wearing satin clothing.
No, not
They're
at all.
too slippery.
No, yeah, terrible.
And then Brad Savage and Ronnie Scribner played the Glick Boys. Nothing really relevant there. You mentioned Barbara Babcock. To our star of the movie. Well, he's not the star. He's the villain of the movie, Barlow, even though he has less than 90 seconds screen time.
I had that in my notes. I was going to slam you with that, but you got me. That's true. Yes.
That's a
90 seconds.
That's
for the
horrible.
lead vampire. 90 seconds.
Yeah. The lead villain has 90 seconds in this movie. Is played by Reggie Nalder. He is a Austrian actor, and he is our 5th Star Trek alum. He was one of the delegates in Journey to Babel.
He is known as the very first Andorian. Yes, and he was great.
Schraz. Yeah.
Yes, he was great.
I had it wrong.
Yes.
That's actually all I. No. I do have one other thing about him, and this has nothing to do with Salem's Lot, but I just found it extremely interesting.
Yes.
Reggie Nalder says, quote, I hated working with Bill Cosby. He is a pig. I met him in Rome where I did an episode of I Spy. Cosby is rude and arrogant, and he walked right by me on the set like I was a piece of furniture. I tried my best to be polite, but he made it impossible.
Wow.
I said, wow, that speaks volumes in light of recent history.
Yeah. Dang.
Yeah. Big time.
I did not know that at all.
Yeah. They were in an episode of I Spy together. Mm-hmm. And then lastly, I've got James Gallery played Father Donald Callahan, although we only see him in like 2 scenes, and he's irrelevant really in the whole thing. Yeah. I mean, in totally the book, there's a really strong scene. Doesn't Barlow piss on him or something? I can't remember. It's like a satanic baptism kind of thing. I don't know. Anyway.
No, what makes it so good in the novel is he makes him drink from Barlow. Barlow makes him drink from himself.
Oh, maybe that's it.
Which doesn't turn him into a vampire. Instead, it curses him. And the great scene where he tries to go back to the church to get retribution, he can't even enter.
He can't enter
the church because he's cursed now. And that's why he leaves town. And it's such a cool story element, but we don't even care about Callahan. He has 2 freaking scenes and we don't care.
No.
So there is this whole, which is another great scene from the book that they try to do in this, but they just do it wrong, which is him after, Barlow, essentially his appearance to the town is much earlier. But in this, it's in the movie, it's with Mark Petrie and his parents. And he kills them, same way he does in the novel, which is just brain them together. But then to rescue Mark, the priest holds up the cross and Mark can get away, but then he loses faith. And it's a really cool thing when he realizes that, the icon doesn't matter. I still remember as a vampire lorist, Barlow grabbing the cross and throwing it away because without faith, it's just a symbol. It doesn't mean anything.
Right.
And I was going, oh, that is so cool.
And that they throw that scene away in the movie. It's barely anything. He's this cape that rises up from the floor.
It's nothing. And we don't care. It's like, okay, fine, great.
And it's he kills them with a Three Stooges move.
Yeah. It's just not good.
It's not good. I did have one other casting note that is totally ludicrous, but I'll say it anyway. Nancy McKeon, Joe from Family Ties, is in an uncredited role as one of the students in the high school play.
Really?
Yeah. And now I want to go back and look because I forgot to when I watched it the first time. Apparently, yeah, you know who she is.
Yeah.
Her
Wow.
brother played Alice's son on the show Alice. He's a McKeon too. I can't think of his name.
Yeah.
They were kid actors of the 70s. That's all I have on casting.
That's pretty strong. I think you covered literally every person that we see in the.
Well, it's a big cast.
It is a big cast, but totally peopled by television actors. Most of it, except for the leads that are better. James Mason, Lou Ayres,
Jeffrey Lewis,
Jeffrey Lewis. Yeah. So. I mean, we're going long, but I've got a ton of watch notes. I won't do them all.
You can do whatever. It doesn't have hardly any awards. That'll go quick. For Primetime Emmys, it was nominated for graphic design. I've never heard of that. Must be the house and makeup,
maybe, or the font. That they stole from us.
Oh, and get this. It was nominated for a Primetime Emmy. You're going to love this. For outstanding achievement in music composition.
See, how is that?
I don't know. I don't know.
Not,
I just read them, folks. But
I just
they didn't win. None of those won. They were just nominations.
Good.
That's all I have. And it is not on the 1001 list either.
Interesting because I think a lot of horror buffs say that you have to watch Salem's Lot, kind of thing. Do you know what the original title was of the novel? I have that in my trivia questions.
I used to, but I can't remember.
He originally titled this in his first draft Second Coming.
Yeah, that's right.
But his wife said it sounded dirty,
like a porno.
Yes. So he changed it, but that's what it was going to be.
That's great.
I'm just glancing here. So wait, Captain Nemo is Straker. Credit music. Oh my God, this music is terrible.
Yeah, I've got that
Mongoose
twice.
Mongoose versus Cobra foreshadowing. That's the first thing that Straker picks up. The old
that's
portable...
Ricky Tikki Tavi, isn't it?
Yeah. The old portable typewriter. Did you feel any kinship to that? I mean, he's got
I hate those things.
Oh my gosh.
I worked on a word processor even in the 90s. It was clunky, but it was still electric and saved things on floppy disk.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've got okay, this movie is just screaming, we hope you read the book.
So you'll remember it better.
So you'll remember stuff like, why is this guy staring at this building for like 3 minutes and he turns around and gets scared by the black stranger guy?
That's a great example of a weird scene. It's like,
yeah,
don't you say something when somebody's standing in your front yard staring at your house? Yeah.
I mean, he
just goes, excuse me, and he just walks by or whatever.
I remember not liking this version because I love the novel so much, but I don't remember it sucking this bad. Pacing is terrible. Close-ups linger too much. It's too brightly lit. Oh my God, this music sucks. I mean,
I've got that one several times. The music I could not get past.
Oh no. I've got Where is Hubie Marston's story? It was so great in the book. I'm not showing pictures. I need to flip around. Why does Barlow move his crate? For what purpose? Makes no sense. I'll save that as a key. I'm going to make that a key. I'll tell you.
Yeah, I've got actually all I've got left is a little trivia and some keys, and that's it. Did you go ahead and do some more of your notes, and I'll throw in some trivia.
I've got for cinephiles. Fast forward to the sheriff's scene where he's on the phone. This is absolutely the worst set dressing I have ever seen in anything. There's an old fan, a gold water pitcher, a magic 8-ball for no reason, a blue table lamp, a Rolodex, a cork board, which you have to say wanted posters, and a postcard, a 60s ashtray, and a dial radio. It's so bad.
Was this the sheriff's office?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is absolutely horrible. You have to go back and just look at it. It is terrible. Pernicious anemia. That's not even a thing. And I don't think it's in the novel either. So why is it said like 9 times?
Oh my God, I've got to go back and read this again. I always say that. I read this book like every decade. So this will be like the 5th time if I go back.
The screenplay uses uses most of the good scenes from the book, but they're just horribly done. I revoke my invitation. So Burke actually says that to Mike Ryerson.
I thought that was interesting. I figured they might have lifted that from the novel.
Well, if that's true, and that's the myth you're holding, because in the other scenes, the boys have to open the window to let the Glick brothers in.
Oh, so they could have said that too, you're saying?
Well, I'm saying that he's holding to that mythos that you have to be invited in,
right?
Which is also, in Buffy and everything else, you have to be invited in.
Mm-hmm.
But yet Barlow wasn't invited in, and he just jumps through the window at the Petries. So why have it if you're not going to use it for everybody, sort of thing.
So because they want to break the rules.
Yeah.
I don't know. No, I get it. What I was going to say is that he did invite Mike in earlier, I guess, because he was treating him.
He said, I want you to stay at my house tonight.
Right.
Yeah.
He invited him. And then he revoked his invitation. Yeah.
Right. Well, so if that's true, cool. Love it. Well, then
Barlow, get the fuck out,
or whatever. I've got, okay, the hospital scene. Seems like I remember this being scarier. This was so great in the book. Mm-hmm. I remember the tongue depressor crosses. That's so cool. So, and I've got a bunch of O's. So Marjorie Glick, huh? She gets a cross to the forehead and just vanishes. And then she turns over all the furniture.
It was such a weird effect, man. It was like you could almost see the strings pulling those gurneys over.
Yeah. We're losing our logic here. So sometimes I can bite you and you turn immediately, or no, now you're sick and you have nightmares and it takes a few days for you to turn. Well, how long does this take?
In the book, it took days because people did get sick and like sensitive to sunlight and stuff. Yeah.
The whole story is weeks. It's literally from Dracula, where it took weeks to get Mina to turn, kind of thing, or Lucy. So obviously some taxidermy has been going on here.
I was going to say that's a big Alfred Hitchcock moment.
Yeah.
It's psycho.
Eyeballs in the drawer, kind of thing. Why would she go to the house? It made no sense for Susan to go to the house. In the novel, I can't remember, but there's a reason. It's because Ben is still in the hospital, I think, in the novel. So she has to go thinking that I'll get to Barlow in the daylight. But in the movie, it makes no sense for her to go to the house. She just, out of the blue, I'm going to drive over there, and sees Mark Petrie. I have Tim. Note for Tim. I hope you have a jacket with elbow patches, because all authors have to have a jacket with elbow patches.
I did at one time. I don't think I do anymore. They're kind of outdated. I don't think Dennis would let me wear one. He's very fashionista.
Lots of squealing Jeep tires on dirt. Okay, you go into the haunted vampire lair. Wouldn't you immediately go to the cellar rather than the upstairs? Why would you not go down? I mean, that seems like
that shot
logic.
When she is downstairs and you see him run across upstairs. I was like, that's a pretty cool shot.
The long shot showing the staircase. And I thought that was cool. I said Mike Flanagan should do the remake. I was going, okay, so we're doing all this Hitchcockian photography of going up the stairs. And now I'm going up the stairs with no weapons? Really?
It's funny that you said that, because that reminded me of Hitchcock too, when Martin Balsam gets stabbed.
Oh, it is. It's directly from Psycho. Same focal angle.
All
everything.
Psycho. And that's why Robert Bloch should have written this. He wrote
Yes.
Psycho.
And didn't Block have something to do with Chainsaw? Did Robert Block write Chainsaw? Who wrote
No,
Chainsaw?
they're both based on Ed Gein.
Ed
And
Gein,
Block's
that's it,
version was
yeah.
Psycho, and Toby's was Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've got, as a side note, I remember trying to write my own screenplay for this after I saw this.
I could see that.
Yep. Because I wanted
tried
it
to write
done right.
one. The second Stephen King book I read was Night Shift, the short stories. And I tried to write a screenplay to Sometimes They Come Back. And they ended up making a terrible movie of that with Kiefer Sutherland, I believe.
So the epilogue for this I've got, okay, does all holy water only work if you put it in blue bottles? Because when we're in Guatemala, we have blue bottles too.
And it looks like that David Off Cool Water cologne or something.
Yeah. Cool waters.
Cool water.
What does shiny light have to do with they found us again? I don't understand any of this.
It made no sense at all.
So heavy makeup must mean we're in Mexico or somewhere south, right? Because they're both wearing that horrible tan makeup.
And they look dirty. And I literally rewound it because I thought they were in the same clothing, but they weren't.
Right. Yeah, I did too. I kind of looked at
those same clothes.
How long has it been since you've been running? Okay, she's not blue. She's no what? She only has the eyes and the fangs. Barlow wasn't young. Straker wasn't young. Nobody else was young. Why did this happen to her? Because it's so easy to get a stake through someone's ribs. Yeah, because he literally just pulls it up and goes, I was like, really? Why was there no flashback with the Martian story? What the hell happened to Callahan? So Crockett and Boom Boom Bonnie, I would love to see how much time is wasted on their characters and nothing happens with them. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, with her just being the secretary at the office, the real estate office or whatever.
Yeah.
It was just stupid.
And that's all of my notes, and I just got keys.
I've got one little trivia thing. This movie has something kind of in common with Romero. Remember we talked about Dawn of the Dead was released in Italy as Zombie. And then when Lucio Fulci's Zombie came out, they called it Zombie 2 because they tried to play it off as a sequel to Dawn of the Dead. Well, this movie was released in Spain as Phantasma 2, as a sequel to Phantasm from 1979.
But it hadn't even been out a year. Why would you have it? And it's nothing like it.
And I would have Phantasm on our list because it's not great, but it's definitely iconic horror. But it has absolutely nothing to do with vampires at all.
Mm-hmm. No,
Great.
not at all.
Okay, I guess we are in key territory. We've mentioned Psycho, obviously. We've mentioned Dracula, and we've mentioned Peyton Place, which was a 60s soap opera that is kind of how King used to describe this book. Dracula meets Peyton Place.
Right.
So there is a soap opera.
Psycho in so many ways. Do soap opera.
Sorry, we keep talking at the same time. I was just saying there is a soap opera aspect to this. And I think they just clung to it too much. And that's why it's kind of boring.
Yeah, but it's a very, it's a very Stephen King trope to take this small New England town, tell all the stories of all these different characters in it, and how they all slowly intertwine or they all get affected by whatever, pebble he throws in the water. Kind of thing. That's a very King standard tradition, and I think it works really well.
It was a trope at the time too, because you had people like Harold Robbins writing about shady characters in the underbelly of society and stuff.
Well, and that's what I mean. That's what I mean by of course it's a Peyton Place story and a soap opera because that's what I think he I don't know if he originated it. I can't say that, but I've got in my keys. This was the first thing of, as vampirism as plague, not vampirism as, oh, there's a bad guy.
Evil.
I know there were always, in the Hammer ones, there was always the vampire and then the vampire brides. But this is the first one I can remember that was really exponential. It was like zombies. They will grow and they will continue to grow, and you will be full of vampires everywhere.
Yeah. I've always been torn. When I write a vampire book, I want to do, Anne Rice and just make it magnificent and huge. But then the evil in me wants to say, oh no, let's make them really nasty, like the ones in Salem's Lot, where they're just, monsters. So you got, the romantic vampires versus the bestial vampires. And I honestly like both. I think they both belong.
I do too.
Genre. Yeah.
It's kind of like, and I like the fact that a good key would be like the game that White Wolf created, Masquerade, which what they did was they created clans. So you would have clans, and it's how the vampirism affects you personally, your genetic code or your soul or whatever. So some of them would be very erudite and, the Straker types, but some of them are monsters like a Nosferatu kind of type. And
that means I'm evil Ed, right?
That's one of my keys, though, is Fright Night. Fright Night was definitely influenced by this freaking movie.
Absolutely. The staircase alone. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And the house.
Well, and I was going back to Psycho. It was Psycho not just in so many ways. The house, of course, the Marston House looks like the Psycho house, or is obviously inspired by the Psycho house. Balsam walking up the stairs is a very Psycho thing. The swinging light as he's stabbing Barlow, and we're seeing that light swing across his face and Mark Petrie's face, but not Barlow's face,
and the things crawling out of the room behind him. Yeah.
Really Psycho.
I wrote some things, and then like why they're key, and for Psycho, I just wrote all over,
everywhere. Yeah.
It's everywhere in here. Yeah.
Well, and the king tropes, you've got the small town, the lead character's a writer, there's a teacher in it, a large cast of characters. I've got those listed too.
Yeah.
Another Hitchcock I've got is The Birds.
I got that.
This too. Is, and I've got it, there's a woman drawn to a small town, there's a romance, and then the town is suddenly under attack. It's very, very Psycho. I mean, very Birds kind of feel. Not only the
credits too.
Yeah, the whole credit sequence. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We mentioned Evil Dead with the boom crane. Yeah,
the Evil Dead. I wrote that down a while ago because I had not thought about it until you mentioned it. But yeah. I have Castle Rock, the television show.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Good one. Which is a huge one because they actually went to the Marston House in the second season.
Oh, I didn't watch the second season. I only watched the first 2 episodes and saw the Annie Wilkes part.
And they kind of play with the trope that it is on sour ground, which is and here's another key. If you go back to Jerusalem's Lot, which was a prequel he wrote to this, a short story, it's a little more Lovecraftian about stuff that happened centuries before the vampires.
And that
came.
Actually has its own miniseries that's out now called Chapelwaite, which is based on that short story. And it's
what is that on?
I think it's on HBO Max.
It figures. I don't get it.
Okay. But they say it's really good. I've got another Evil Dead one, which is kind of production-y, but the Reggie Nalder said he hated the contact lenses because that's not a CGI effect. Naturally, it's 79. Those are contact lenses, and they had to be sclerotic. So they had to cover the whole eye, even though just the iris was reflective. And Reggie Nalder said he could only wear them like 10 or 15 minutes, which is exactly what the girls and Ash, and Bruce and everybody had trouble with in Evil Dead, which is they could only wear those for like 15 minutes. Especially Ellen in the pit and everything. I've got, all the movies that followed that were severely influenced by this movie specifically, not just this novel, but like Lost Boys. Lost Boy even has the same eye effect. All
And
the
the
vampires
kids
Lost
floating
Boys.
outside the window reminds me of the
Kids
Lost
floating
Boys
outside
too.
the window,
Yeah.
very Lost Boys feel. Buffy. Joss Whedon has said he was influenced by this miniseries when he was working on Buffy. And Fright Night. We mentioned Fright Night.
Fright Night, specifically for the house. When they're in the house at the end and it's lit, it's still afternoon, and you can see that staircase. It just reminds me of Chris Sarandon when he comes walking down that staircase and says, "Welcome to Fright Night." Yeah,
definitely.
I have the Dark Tower book series. Even though I don't know that anything was taken directly from the film. It was definitely taken from the book because Callahan is a major character in those novels toward the end. I also have one that you may have got, and it happened just prior by a year, but he totally rips off John Carpenter when Mike Ryerson's body goes out that window and they go and do that shot to the ground and nothing's there. It's the exact same thing.
It is. It's Halloween. Totally. Yeah.
Totally Halloween.
I've got one that you might appreciate because I'm still into my just starting the second season, but Hannibal, because of the antler impaling, the way they kill the doctor, and that's the way they kill one of the characters in Hannibal.
Actually, Brian Fuller said he totally ripped it off.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
He said that he ever since seeing that as a kid, he wanted to have murders by antlers, and that's why he did it in the Hannibal series. I thought that was funny. Here's the title music sounds like Lost in Space.
Yep. You said that, and now I'm going to have to listen to dun, 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 dun.
It is. It's so strange how much it sounds like it. And then the rest of the music doesn't sound anything like that at all.
No,
it's like
very Bernard Herrmann. It's very slow.
Yeah.
Yes. Very
like Fantasy Island, whatever. I don't know. It's terrible. I put One for the Road, which was a sequel that King wrote in Night Shift. And it's a great story. It's a great little short story about somebody's car breaking down on a snowy road outside Jerusalem's Lot.
Yeah, they go to the bar, right?
Well, the guy leaves his wife and kid in the car and leaves it running and goes to find help because they're either out of gas or have a flat tire or something.
Right.
And he gets to the bar and they're like, "Oh no, did you say Jerusalem's Lot?" You know, or whatever.
Yeah.
And by the time he gets back, they're gone. And and then he finds one of them and there's no footprints.
Yeah.
Because
I remember that. No,
that's
a short story. That was good. That was good. I've got Robert Rodriguez's From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah.
Because it feels like it's the epilogue and the prologue and saying what would happen then. You know, what would happen if we were in Mexico with vampires? Sort of thing. It's that whole kind of feel. It's like the extension of this.
It's all Stephen King's fault. Damn him.
It's all Stephen King's fault.
I have, and I didn't really think about it until we got to talking about it. There's Salem's Lot, this movie. There's Salem's Lot, the remake with Rob Lowe and Rutger Hauer.
Yeah.
And now there's soon to be a third. Directed by James Wan, I believe.
What?
Yeah, they're in production right now.
Really? I didn't know this.
Yeah, I think it's a movie. I don't think it's a TV thing. I could be wrong because both the others were TV. I think Rob Lowe was on TNT, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. I think this may be theatrical. But anyway, my key is, will this be I Am Legend? Because there is yet to be a good movie made of I Am Legend either. And there's 3. You know?
Well, you've got, Charlton Heston, that's just some epic.
I would watch that movie and critique it with you in a heartbeat. I love that movie, but it is not I Am Legend. Yeah.
We definitely should do that and I should read the novel again before. Just because
that's another novel I revisit frequently. But folks, if you don't know what we're talking about the Omega Man, which was the first adaptation of Richard Matheson's I Am Legend, and it's terrible. And then,
It's
I take
not
it back.
terrible.
It's the second adaptation.
It's got Matthias out front with his albino skin saying, come out, you know.
And I made a mistake. It's not the first, it's the second. The first was Last Man on Earth with Vincent Price. Then there was Omega Man, and then there was I Am Legend with Will Smith. And I don't like any of them. None of them are as good as the book.
And what is it?
I'm afraid the same thing's going to happen with Salem's Lot.
Does Will Smith just have an agent who goes, hey, do you have a highly successful novel property that we can turn into a movie with Will, but not use any of the source material at all? You know, like he did I, Robot too, which is nothing like the freaking short stories. It's terrible. And people go, I'm not even going to read that book if it's like the movie. I'm like,
well, they tried to modernize I Am Legend, and they turn all the vampires into like the strain monsters.
The strain monster, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and that speaking, I mean, we've got to give homage, you know, if we're talking about Salem's Lot, to every other vampires movie since then, including The Strain and all the ones
Passage.
that have the Passage, all the ones that, even the modern ones that are trying to tell this plague story too. Which is frightening. You know, this movie, another element of the book, the movie doesn't show it as well, I think, but should. But is, you know, it's not you cut off the head and they all die kind of thing. It's not the old mythos of kill one and then all of them will turn into dust. It's nope, he's just the leader then. You know, it's like, isn't it 30 Days of Night? Where they actually end up killing the lead vampire and all the rest of them are still alive, kind of thing. Isn't it plaguey too, like that?
30 Days of Night. I love that movie, but it has a terrible ending.
Well, no, it has the ending where the guy
he gives it to himself.
Sunlight, gives it to himself or whatever.
Yeah, I don't like the ending. But the beginning, like the first half of that movie, rocks.
Oh yeah,
it's great.
So good, and it's got a good buildup, whereas this one doesn't. It's got a good small town vibe of this remote area in Alaska, you know, and all of their little stories, and then how suddenly the strangers come to town and you are screwed.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It brings you back to what we were talking about earlier, romantic vampires versus savage vampires. And it's a savage vampire, as is the Strain, as is
Passage.
The Passage. However, they are in I Am Legend, the book, but they're also articulate. They can talk and stuff. I mean, he's always saying, Neville, come out, Neville, you know, when they're throwing rocks at the house or whatever.
Well, and
so, you know what? I Am Legend is a key to this too, because Stephen King would tell you that in a heartbeat.
It definitely is.
He borrowed stuff from that.
Definitely is. I mean, I like it, and you know, but thinking about it as a second novel by an author, oh my gosh, no wonder he is who he is.
After the success of Carrie, the movie, this novel sold like hotcakes. You know it did.
And wasn't Shining the third?
Yes.
Wasn't that his third? Jesus Christ. I mean, you're just like, I'm knocking them out of the park, boys. Here I go.
And The Stand was fourth.
Well, see, now you're done.
Actually, Night Shift may have been fourth, but they were both around that time. The first 5 books were what we just said.
Jeez.
Carrie, Salem's Lot, The Shining, The Stand, and Night Shift.
Yeah. I mean, I guess a key might be too, what influence did it have on King too? Because, you know, this skyrocketed his popularity, and then so many of his works have been attempted in some form of filmatic media, whether it's television or movie.
Well, you had the first wave shortly after of Stephen King films of the 80s, most of which are horrible.
Well, you had Firestarter, Cujo, I mean, all those. Christine.
Dead Zone, Christine.
Dead Zone.
Now, some of them aren't bad. I mean, Dead Zone's pretty good. Stand By Me, obviously, is great.
Stand By Me is brilliant.
Yeah.
And that was it. I didn't write it in my notes, but I was going to say, because one of the things in doing research for this, one of the things I saw was people say that this is still to date the best adaptation of a Stephen King novel. And I went, no,
What?
Stand By Me is the best adaptation of a Stephen King
Or
work
Shawshank
ever.
Redemption, or I mean, you've got The Green Mile. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there that's better than this.
Oh yeah,
Lots.
totally agree. Totally agree. Yeah.
I mean, I could probably name 20 that are better than this.
Yes. Yeah, I would.
This just has
would too.
iconic moments that people remember from their childhood, I think. Like if I had seen this movie before I'd read Stephen King, had I been 7 and saw this movie, I would have thought it was the coolest thing in the world.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So, but it doesn't hold up well. To me, it is not. It does still have, like we said, those few scenes that are iconically scary, or images, iconic images.
Yeah, here's another one.
But story-wise, it does not hold up, and character-wise, it does not hold up at all. Yeah.
You mentioned Stephen King being inspired. He always, for the longest time, and I've kind of done this myself now that I think about it, wanted to do a sequel to this book, and it was gonna involve Father Callahan, because Callahan's the one that left town.
He got away.
Yeah.
And he wasn't a vampire. He was cursed, but he wasn't.
He was cursed, but not a vampire. And he for the longest time he said, I'm going to do a sequel. And he never did it. But then when he finally got around to writing the last 3 Dark Tower books, he brought that sequel into the Dark Tower books and kind of married them, which is something I've done myself, where I have like 2 ideas and they end up being the same book, that kind of thing.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting. And he probably got a little bit of closure from doing that, I would think. Not having
we have had
out there.
2 great weeks of King.
I know, and we've got another one.
And we got another one. We got a 3rd one. Hey, all of you stay tuned, because Act 3, oh my gosh.
Yeah, because it's a power couple.
And
and it's not a double feature.
Not a double feature, but there. Yeah.
We don't need a double feature. These are already running too long.
Yes.
All right. Well, everyone out there, we appreciate you listening to us. You have been listening to Johnny Has the Keys. I swear it's not just 2 guys on a telephone.
No, not at all.
And if you're watching us, you'll see that scary picture of Kurt Barlow above my right shoulder. On YouTube, please click the subscribe button. It is a very small little movement of your fingers that means absolutely nothing to you, but tons to us. Please tell your friends about us. You can find us on any of those podcast platforms out there. And if you're looking for a little bit extra of this crazy
stuff we do.
Yeah. I had an adjective on my head, tip of my tongue, and it left me. Anyway, any of this craziness, you can indulge further with our stuff on Patreon. We have a show on Star Trek, which obviously we talked a lot about this episode, and the X-Files. And until next week, happy holidays, David, and let's do it again.
Let's do it again next week. Can't wait.
All right. See you. Bye.
Bye.
Can't start the car. Johnny has